Here is my track guide for Zolder in Belgium. Perhaps not Belgium's most notable circuit compared to Spa-Francorchamps, of course, but Zolder was the first purpose-built track in Belgium. 10 turns, 4 kilometres long, or 2.5 miles approximately, and being one of the older circuits, it means there's less runoff in some areas for drivers if they get it wrong. So while some bits it's not so bad, there are certainly areas of this track where if you go off, you're pretty much going into a wall and potentially going to end your race. So always something to be very careful of around here. You've got some big curbs on some of the chicanes as well. So you've got to make sure that you get those right, because if you do it well, you can gain a lot of time. If you do it wrong, you can end up getting spun or, as I say, going off into a wall. So definitely some pitfalls and definitely some time to capitalise on. Let's jump in with a flying lap and take a look at it at full speed first, and then we'll break it down corner by corner. Here we go then, coming into turn 1 with Chrissy Palmer at one of our last races we did here in the InGear Motorsport AMG. First part of the lap, it's just a case of being quite technical and accurate with your braking to make sure you get the car stopped the right amount, you trail brake the right amount, and hit those apexes. Don't let the car run too wide. Again, straight away, if you go off, there's not a lot of runoff in some of these places, or you're straight in gravel traps. So 10 corners of the lap, we're coming up to the first chicane then. And you're looking for that 100-metre ball on the right, you're braking just after it, and then you can see there's some cones on the inside of the corners that you don't want to hit, because that then will be the track limit. So it does mean you can use a bit of it, and the AMG quite likes a little bit of curb. It doesn't mind riding over them so much compared to, say, the Porsche. So you'll see Chrissy using all the curb that you can get away with pretty much as you go through these turns here. And then we go through this fast right-hander section that leads us on the run down to a hairpin. So this will tee you up for one of really the best overtaking spots on the track, which is here into this hairpin. So you want to get a good run out of those. Hairpin is all about traction on the exits, a late apex, getting the power down as soon as you can, as soon as that steering wheel starts to straighten up. And then we begin our run up to the final chicane of the lap already. So not the longest laps here at Zolder, it's all over pretty quick, and not a lot of time to think on the way round either. There we are then again, you've got to get that traction down. You don't want to be running too high a TC setting, you can get away with it and just be smooth on the power yourself. So this was during the race last time, and we had quite a good battle to start with, and then Chrissy just broke away. So certainly lots of pace there for him. So I mentioned there's a lot of occasions where you can easily capitalise or consequence yourself based on how you take some of these chicanes. And in qualifying, it's not so bad to really attack hard, but actually in a racing environment, there's a lot of opportunities for drivers. So this was actually my onboard for the last race that we did here. So as you watch, we're going to the chicane, watch how close I am to hitting the Porsche on the way out of Stallman, as he makes a little mistake on the second curve. There he is. Nearly loses the rear end, and then I managed to get through and move on to try and chase Chrissy. So you can just see different cars are more comfortable than others over the curb. So that's one thing to bear in mind for this track guide, is that depending on what car you're driving, you'll be able to get away with the curbs more or less. But I'm going to base this off the AMG, and most of the cars you can of course tweak the setup and stuff to get them comfortable to the same level. But just one important note really before we get too much into this. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit for you. So you can see then we're at the start finish straight at the moment. So we'll come underneath the start gantry and make our way up to turn 1. Now with turn 1, you're looking to brake somewhere just before this banner that goes across the track. So, or roughly where the Coca-Cola logo is, maybe just a tad before that. And it's not so much a really hard stand on the brake as you might think. It's more about trail braking, so you can keep the weight on the nose of the car to get this apex in here. And actually I find just clipping the curb a little bit helps the car rotate on the way through. So tiny bit of curb can be your friend on this occasion. And then getting the power down as quickly as you can. You can use this runoff out here, but of course don't want to go onto the gravel. So make sure you get the turning done early, get the steering wheel straightened up as quickly as you can, and get on the power on the way out. And then we begin our run into turn 2. It's a similar principle again. The way the track kind of just falls in a little bit, you can see it's ever so slightly sloped and cambered inwards. It means that you don't want to be too wide. You can even see as the track's rubbered in here, because this is a race condition, you've got all the marbles on the outside edge of the circuit there. So you want to make sure you kind of follow that sort of darker tarmac line. So you notice, unlike a normal sort of line, we're not right the way out to the edge. We're actually just sort of half a car length in. and then we come in again, get the apex, a little bit of curb. Don't find you can use that one quite as much as turn 1, just maybe the red and white part, don't go onto the bumps. And then again get the power down, and you want to try and get it so that you can get the power down as early as you can. So if that means braking a tiny bit earlier so you can get the power on sooner, then that's well worth it for the run around this entire next section. So slower in, faster out is always the thing to do with that one. And you can again come right out to here, and I do find if I've got it really nailed, then you are coming out here to the outside of the circuit. This should then just be completely flat out, just keeping it as smooth as possible. The less steering input you use, the faster the car will go and the more speed you'll be able to carry. Now, as we're coming down here then, if we're at the driver's eye level, you can see you've got these extra bits of tarmac runoff on the left-hand side. I find that serves as a good braking marker. So the first one is, yes, so the first one is pretty much where you just start to brake, because you're coming in at quite a high speed, and then the second one is roughly where you start to turn in. So you've got some nice visual references there, and unlike cones or signs, they won't get hit or disappear throughout the race. Again, try not to turn in too early either though, so you want to make sure that you're apexing slightly later than the centre of the corner, so you can get a nice straight line, get the power on, and get the car away again on the way out without having to worry about running out onto that tarmac, the gravel. If you touch this gravel even a little bit, it just sucks power out of the car, and you'll feel the speed just drop, and you'll watch your delta go down on the time as well. So make sure that you turn in a bit later so that you don't have that issue of running onto the gravel. Then as we run up to the first chicane, I'm looking for that 100-metre board, like I said, on the fast lap on the right hand side, and then a tiny bit more. I actually find it's somewhere between this pylon with the lights, or they lights or speakers, whatever they are. There we are. So roughly in the middle between the two, that's where you hit the brakes, and again, car fuel load dependent, that will vary a little bit. And then you come down to second gear. Some drivers even like to go to first, but I prefer the speed of second. And there's two ways to take this corner really. There is full attack, or there is more conservative race pace, as I would call it. Now the lap times are actually high 1 minute 28s, low 29s for the faster drivers on this track. So if you're really pushing for a qualifying time, then you would really attack this left curve quite a lot. You can actually see the darker sort of rubbered line even goes over the sausage part of the curb, the bigger lump on there. You can use that. There is just a bit of a risk of the car spinning, and that's why I showed you that moment with Stallman in that clip just now, where I was following him and he just lost the rear end a little bit. So it's important that you kind of prioritise whether you want to do the risk or not, whether you're really pushing for laps. But anyway, we come in, we use a lot of the curb on our fastest lap on the left, and then what's important is that the steering wheel is completely straight for the second part of this chicane. If you hit this with too much steering lock on, then you'll just bounce up in the air and spin very easily, even easier than the first one. So really get the car nice and straight steering lock, and you go straight over this. It may even take off a little bit and then land again, and you want to have the steering wheel straight for that. If the steering's turned and the car lands after a bump, then you're going to shoot off. So straight steering wheel for the second part, and really use the curb more so on the first part. And then we run uphill, again quite a tricky section. Because as you're coming around this long flat out left-hander, you have to remember to hit the brakes quite soon afterwards. And it's another one where you want to attack, but you also need to make sure that you don't go in so deep that you can't get the best line through the corner, because you compromise yourself for the second half of the chicane then. So I find roughly as I reach a straight line again, I'm pretty much on the brake just before this curb. So sort of come around, straight line, bang on the brakes. And notice as well, we can actually use this curb a little bit to give ourselves a bit more room to open the corner up. So use every inch of that curb there to make sure you don't have to steer too tightly here. The cones represent where track limits are, so you can actually use a lot of this, and I've actually got photos where, sorry I went under the track there, I've got photos where the car is fully inside the white line, which technically isn't right, but the game seems to let you do it. So maximise that as much as you can. And then again on the left, use perhaps slightly less curb, but you're still pretty much going close to these cones. Again, don't be tempted to put the power down too soon. It's about kind of getting the right exit speed through this, so definitely attack it, perhaps a bit more than some of the others, but also focus on getting exit speed. So if you find that you're struggling to get the car turned here, you're probably attacking too much on the right, and then it's putting you out of position over here somewhere, and you're having to work double time to get back again. and then you've got no steering lock on and you're suddenly trying to do even more to get back over here. So it's a spiralling effect if you go in too deep, so that's why the braking is so important to begin with. So again, use most of the first curve, most of the second curve, get the steering wheel straight and ease the power in gently, even if you have to really feather it in little bits at a time. I find I have to do that in the AMG, or the back just steps out. Depending on the grip levels, you might even find that you can take this flat out. The car seems to twitch a little bit, it's like there's a bump in the track. So that's usually okay, providing I don't touch the curb. I might just brush the white and red, but never any more than that. If you touch it too much because of that bump and the nature of the speed you're doing, there's not a lot of downforce yet, the back will spin quite easily. So you've got to make sure that you're smooth with the power, smooth with the steering, and don't clip too much of that curb there. Okay, use all of the runoff out here. You'll find if you've done it right, you have no choice but to use all the runoff out here because the car is pushing you out to the outside. Again, we're looking to keep it flat out, but don't be shy to have a little bit of a lift earlier rather than later, because you'll suffer less if you have a quick lift beforehand, get the nose in and power on. But again, I find when everything's hooked up, flat out is the way to go. And then we come down again, braking is absolutely crucial here. I find it's just on the 100-meter border, if not just before, for this hairpin, because again, it's the exit speed that we want. I'm not worried about going that tiny bit later on the brakes. I want a better exit speed. So brake nice and late, but make sure you get it stopped about the 100-meter board. Late apex, you can just vaguely see how the line comes in a little bit sort of after this green AstroTurf section, so looking to apex around there. And then the steering wheel should be nice and straight by this point. Even if, what I find, you have to what I almost call V it off. So if you imagine the shape of a V rather than a smooth curve, it means you get most of your turning done at this point, so that you're in a straight line here. You can get the power down straight to this outside curve, at which point the car's settled, got a little bit of downforce, and you might be able to correct that last little bit. But the importance is getting the power down with the steering wheel straight to start with. And then we come onto the last corner of the lap, and I'm looking to brake sort of just before this blue gantry sign here. So nice and hard on the brakes underneath that. Use this little bit of space on the outside if you can. Again, these little bits can be really helpful with just helping you get a better run for the corner and not having to turn as sharply. So we come in, and this chicane, I find you just can't really use the curbs at all. Again, maybe a touch of the blue and blue? What am I talking about? The red and white curb, but just don't use those sausage curbs, definitely. So literally just clip it. Again, it's so important that you get a good exit. So if you find that you're getting pushed over here and then having to work really hard to turn the car through the second part and then running all the way out wide here, it's because you're going in too hard for the first part of the chicane, or you're using too much first curb. So again, slightly later, use a little bit but hardly touch it. Get the car over to this left hand side as best you can, and then focus on nailing the power, coming right out. And it's the same principle like I talked about before. You want to get that steering lock straight, even if it's for a moment, get the power down, let the car settle, and then correct that last little bit of turning using this runoff once you've got a bit more traction and a bit more downforce. And that's it, we run all the way along. Little tip for qualifying runs, if you know it's a good lap, then stay on the left hand side. Don't waste that little bit of time by dragging the car over to the right ready for the next lap. You can just get that cleaner run and save a couple hundredths potentially. And of course, every little helps. So there you go, hope you enjoyed that. That is my track guide for Zolder, and do let me know if there's other tracks that you'd like to see guides for or any other information like that, and we'll look at getting more of these made.